Show. You are one-on-one with Wes the Sports Guy here on YouTube and online all the time at westhesportsguy.com. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell, and as always, use the hashtag #OneOnOneWes to participate in the weekly conversations. That way I can see what you're talking about and partake in those conversations as well every single week. And while you're there at westhesportsguy.com, make sure you follow the website as well. It is a WordPress website, but again, there is a follow button at the top. Make sure you can get updated with all the latest posts, recaps, previews, all the good stuff that's coming there at westhesportsguy.com. And as always, of course, subscribe and hit that bell on YouTube for the weekly show and get notifications when new episodes are dropped every single week. Going right into it, the NBA NHL playoffs are just about wrapped up, I should say, getting into the finals, but we are currently now in the conference finals, both in the East and West of every respective league, in the NBA and NHL. In the NBA, you've got Milwaukee basically taking command of that series, going up 2-0, winning the first two games at home against the Toronto Raptors. And looking at the way Toronto's been playing in these first two games in that conference final, it is basically Kawhi Leonard and really not much else. And if you remember what happened in that series between the Toronto Raptors and the Philadelphia 76ers, an epic Game 7 with a game-winning shot to compete with any other Game 7 game-winning shot you could think of, or just not even a Game 7, but just a game-winning shot in general. Kawhi Leonard, just unbelievable performance, and you have to give him all the credit in the world for getting the Raptors to where they are right now. But then on the other flip side of that coin, with Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks, he is proving probably why he should be the MVP all season long. I predicted him to be the MVP from the beginning of the season. You can go back to westhesportsguy.com and check that out. Beginning of the season, I had him as the MVP. Not even considering James Harden was going to do even more ridiculous things than what he did last season when he was the MVP. Giannis, to me, is the clear-cut favorite, in my opinion. But looking at it from the Bucks' perspective too, not just with Giannis, their depth is incredible. They have depth in the backcourt. They have depth in the front court. They have mismatches all over the court. And that's not to say Toronto is a terrible team in any aspect of that. I mean, they were one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference all season long. But seeing at how this is playing out going into this conference final, it is Milwaukee's show and nobody else's right now. So I don't expect a sweep, but I certainly expect the Milwaukee Bucks to finish the job, get into the NBA Finals for the first time since it was Lou Alcindor and not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that they had. That was the last time they won an NBA championship, FYI. In the West, the Golden State Warriors are taking advantage as well against the Portland Trail Blazers. They have a 2-0 series lead, although it should have been tied 1-1, considering how one-sided it was in Game 2 with the Trail Blazers at least in one half. When it was the third quarter, though, the Golden State Warriors just took control of the game, and they did not look back. It was close at the end, thankfully. I mean, it's been relatively close between these two teams so far, but Golden State's got a commanding 2-0 lead. They're going to be playing in Portland the next two. I gave Portland a puncher's chance, knowing that Kevin Durant's not going to play majority of this series, it looks like, with his calf injury. But even so, the Warriors are getting hot with guys like Steph Curry, Draymond Green, are just controlling and dominating their opponents right now. And really, Portland has no answer to those guys. The only thing they can do is really outscore them, but even that's asking a lot to outscore the Golden State Warriors right now. When you look at the NHL with their conference finals, you have a 2-2 series tied between the St. Louis Blues and San Jose Sharks. And, of course, the other team that has already clinched their spot, the sweep of the Carolina Hurricanes by the Boston Bruins. That was a relatively snooze fest of a series, unfortunately, but credit to Carolina. Nobody had Carolina even getting into the playoffs this year, let alone the Eastern Conference Finals, so credit to them for getting that far. But the Boston Bruins just had no issues whatsoever, just casting them off to the side and then waiting in the wings for either St. Louis or San Jose. Everybody's calling the San Jose Sharks the Lucky Sharks, and they're taking umbrage to that, which you kind of have no other adjective to describe it, because they got lucky in Game 7 against the Vegas Golden Knights with a 5-minute major that ended up being a 5-minute power play. They scored 3 goals in Game 7 on that power play to thrust them into an eventual victory in Game 7 against the Vegas Golden Knights, and then they also had another penalty against the Colorado Avalanche. Or excuse me, not a penalty, but a goal that was taken away by Colorado in that Game 7 of that series, where it was a clear penalty. Obviously, Colorado was offsides, but you look at what recently happened in Game 3 with the Blues and the Sharks, where a hand pass was obviously happened in Game 3 of overtime by the San Jose Sharks, and that was not seen by the refs. They could not review it because it's not part of the rules, and that brings into the whole debate about expanding replay and such and so forth, on and on and on. It's going to change. Granted, the NHL is very... they've been reactive in the past about a lot of things, but in this case, they can't really be as reactive as they should be because it is the playoffs, and it's a mistake that obviously should not have happened. But looking at it, the NHL is going to change the rules. Let's just hope this doesn't affect the entire outcome of the series anymore. We've had it once in this series. Let's not have it again. Move on. San Jose and St. Louis, as I said, tied at 2. That should be very interesting to see who comes out on top in the West to play the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup Final. Time for the segment that describes itself by saying, how impressive am I? Do you remember?
You remember?
Do you remember when athletes were being honest about themselves and how the media was just craving honesty and wanting it, but then at the same time when they were kind of being honest about their situation or their talent, whatever the case may be, and then they get reamed for it, that honesty? Well, case in point, recently with Terry Rozier with the Boston Celtics, guard for them having been ousted by the Milwaukee Bucks in the semifinals of the NBA playoffs this past week, he went on to say that if the roster stays intact the way it is, he just might have to get out of town while the getting's good. And of course, he went on to explain himself by basically saying that he was not utilized with the talent that he is capable of. And of course, he's comparing it to what he did last season in the playoffs for the Celtics when they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. He was averaging over 16 points, over 5 rebounds, and about 5 assists a game. So it was relatively almost a one-man show with Boston. If you remember, he had some pretty big performances, pretty big moments as well in that entire playoff run. But beside that point, the way this season played out for the Boston Celtics was an utter failure, of course. You expected them to at least get to the conference finals, if not the NBA finals, with the roster intact the way it was. Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward coming back from his injury, those two players being healthy, but it just did not mesh. And also, it was a bit of a detriment to a guy like Terry Rozier, but at the same time, he was getting utilized. He was getting playing time, obviously, but he looks at it from that perspective of what he did last season to compare to what he did this season. And the results were not the same, obviously. Now, he's being upfront. He's being honest about it. I didn't really appreciate the fact that he was also talking about himself in the third person by saying Terry Rozier wanted to do this and Terry Rozier wanted to do that. I don't care for that. We don't need any more Ricky Hendersons of the world right now in sports. But Terry Rozier does have a point, and he's honest about it, and I appreciate that honesty. I'm sick and tired of the ho-hum press conferences, the Bill Belichicks of the world that don't want to be as informative as they should be to both the press and to their audience, their fans, and so on and so forth. But I appreciate this kind of honesty. I'm not going to ream him for it because he's not really criticizing the team for its failure and not utilizing him. That's not where he was coming from. He was coming from just the production standpoint. He was disappointed in himself. He's disappointed in the outcome, but at the same time, he's being honest about it. If he's not going to perform at this level, if he's not going to be given the opportunity, he should look elsewhere. FYI, he is a restricted free agent at the end of the season when it's all said and done later this summer, so it'll be interesting to see if Boston does try to keep him or trade him for assets, which that's kind of what Boston's been doing. They've built up a lot of assets for the future. But going forward, I want more honesty. Don't tear this guy apart for that kind of honesty. Time for my feel-good story of the week. This comes from the Somerset Patriots baseball announcer, Mark Schwartz.
Skeeter's the only other team, aside from the Patriots and the Ducks, with double-digit wins on the young season. The 1-1. Cordulo swings and fouls it off towards the broadcast booth, and I make the catch on the foul ball. I am very proud of myself. I hope somebody got video of that, as I caught it on the fly. And it's a 1-2 count. Boy, am I impressive. What a play by me.
That takes me back. That takes me back to those days when I was a broadcaster for the now defunct Long Beach Armada of the Golden Baseball League back in the summer of 2008, and never got that opportunity to catch a foul ball, but I, of course, called many foul balls that were going out of the stadium and behind us in a very small field, Blair Field in Long Beach, California, which, looking at the vicinity around that area, it's basically almost like a residential area, you could say, and a lot of cars parked behind that stadium. So they always did the glass crashing every time a foul ball went out of the stadium, which happened quite a bit. But again, I have no idea if any car got damaged when those situations arose, but I know my car didn't get damaged, thankfully. But again, very good moment there, and I salute you, Mark Schwartz. That is a timeless moment for yourself. It sure was impressive to catch that on the fly, and of course he then gave the ball away to a wayward fan in the audience. But congratulations, Mark, on a very impressive play. Thank you for tuning in this week. I will see you next time here on YouTube, one-on-one with yours truly, Wes the Sports Guy. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. Use the hashtag #OneOnOneWes. Go to westhesportsguy.com, bookmark that site, and get ready for more recaps, previews, and lots more content for you on that website and here on YouTube as well. Until then, I will see you next time.